All right, I think we can get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Akila, and I'm an Associate Product Marketing Manager here at Sherweb, and I'll be your host for today. Before I hand it over to Guy to get us started, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items pretty quickly. First, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll receive the link to this webinar as well as the slides after this webinar in a follow-up email. Second, we do have the chat and as well as the Q&A window. Please feel free to drop your questions in either of those places, and our experts will try to address them during the session, but we also have a Q&A session at the end, so we have some time for questions then as well. So I think that's pretty much it for housekeeping, so I will hand it over now to Guy to get us started today.
Thank you, Akila. Hello, everybody. Indeed, my name is Guy Sauvé. I'm Director of the Performance Cloud Practice at Sherweb. So welcome to this webinar. I've been doing some hard work in order to make the content as relevant as possible to you. So to be with me today, I'll have my partners in crime. So Alex from my team is a product manager at Sherweb for Performance Cloud. Roddy Bergeron is our technical fellow and will cover cyber security. And from our sales team, we have Matt and Nowak, which will may step in during the presentation. We'll also be on the watch to answer your questions. Some of them, feel free to put them in the chat. Some of them will be answered directly, and some of them can be brought to the attention of the whole group for me and the team to answer. So, without further ado, first, I'd like to spend a 30-second advertisement basically regarding recent news that are not directly related to Performance Cloud. So in case you missed it, we were quite busy adding new products in our portfolio. As you can see, looking at these products, our intensity in introducing new security products, so new vendors in our portfolio on our marketplace has been quite busy, and this is essentially recent announcements. 6 of them have been added on top of other ones that are not in the security field. So definitely an area where we and our partners are spending more and more energy. We're also quite busy with webinars and different topics with our partners, and many of them are also published on our YouTube channel. Feel free to watch them. The first 2 actually are recent webinars that are published. The first one on the VDS program. And if you don't want to go through the entire webinar, in short, for anyone that's in Microsoft, it's a reselling Microsoft. This is a program to surgically target specific workloads of your customer. Example, their SQL licenses might be end of life, and therefore it creates an opportunity, very surgical opportunity for you to position new services. There's something on Help Desk, so white label Help Desk, that's available on YouTube, and upcoming webinars on Copilot agents, as well as one tomorrow to unlock growth with Azure migration opportunities. So there's really 2 main parts that we'd like to cover today. The first one is the latest announcements since our last webinar on the topic, which was in April. So the past 2 months have been surprisingly busy with Broadcom and the people like ourselves in the ecosystem. And it turned out that it was supposed to be a very, very simple slide to update the latest news. And it turns out that we prepared a few slides about that because it's so significant. A lot have been announced, and I believe this is worth spending a few minutes to understand that. Also, we want to deep dive on one aspect of security, which is available today. So this is not related to the latest and greatest in the past couple of months. These are things that are available today. They have been available for some time. And especially want to deep dive on authentication best practices that we are certainly encouraging you to better understand and to actually activate if that's not currently the case. And we'll keep some time for Q&A at the end. As I mentioned earlier, feel free also to ask your questions at any moment during this presentation. So first, I'd like to have a quick poll question with Akila that will be facilitating. Why we're asking those questions, really to understand from what angle you're looking at this presentation. So essentially, what is your road to market for VMware? It can be either you're an existing client of Performance Cloud, you might be buying licenses and running a VMware stack that you own, you may be a reseller, You might be a VMware cloud service provider, like Sherweb is a primary service provider. You may be primary as well or secondary, buying licenses potentially from us. We want to understand that, and the news that we'll present in the next few slides, some of them will be more relevant depending of your route to market. If you're other, so if you're not among the top four, feel free to put in the chat what's your route to market, because for sure we want to understand the audience today, and Akila will be commenting on the results.
Yeah, so far it's split between we are a client for Performance Cloud, we are a VMware Cloud Service Provider, and other. Seems like other actually just took the lead. So if you did choose other, please put that in the chat, and we'd love to kind of see what your route is.
Excellent. So we'll spend a little less time on the reseller aspect, although some of it is relevant, given that we're all part of the ecosystem. So what happens to resellers and their clients also influences what's happening on Performance Cloud and CSPs as it creates different and new opportunities. So thanks for those answers. So let's start with Performance Cloud per se. A couple of things that are quite important. First, we're launching the US South. We're currently deploying that in Dallas, Texas, and the launch is planned for October 2025. So if you have clients that are potential PC clients, Performance Cloud clients that are, for instance, look for some type of sovereign cloud in Texas or lower latency, that would be of interest. So we have already lined up customers in Texas, and this will complement our presence, which is already pretty strong in Eastern US, Canada, and Europe, as well as providing diversity, as we've seen the past few years. For instance, we have episodes of hurricanes, which are potentially impacting both data centers, or at least they're on the path of the hurricanes. There was never any major incident for us, but the future with climate changes means that, the possibility of having both data centers impacted, although they are 700 miles apart, is something that's a possibility, and we need to get ready for that. So very, very happy about this launch, and we'll tell you more about it. And feel free to reach out to us if you may have opportunities in this in the US for such a center. We also want to share that there's a lot of information circulating about vCloud Director. If you're a PC client, as you know, the vCloud Director is really your front-end interface. This is how you are interacting with the VMware cloud that we are providing. Lots of information, rumors circulating on the web, so we went straight to the source, and we got a very accurate report from Broadcom telling us what is the future of vCloud Director. So there's some good news. So the end of VCD itself is only planned by the end of 2027, so we have 2 years, and there'll be a migration to a new tool, which was called ARIA. Now there's a bit of rebranding happening around that, so it's going to be branded around VCF, but VCF might be automation or operations will take over the multi-tenant capabilities currently provided by VCD. And we're expecting that, we'll talk a little more about VCF 9.0 that was just announced. We're expecting to see the capabilities currently provided by vCloud Director into something that would be more like a version 9.1 of VCF. So there, for sure, as soon as it's released, we'll start testing it and keeping you posted. But in the immediate future, there's nothing to worry about. It's business as usual as far as the way you are interacting with VCD. And there's a sense of optimism also that there might be new capabilities that will also be provided as part of that transition. So VCD is the platform for the foreseeable future, version 10.6. There will not be a version 10.7, but there are dot releases, and we'll continue implementing that. Those dot releases for new functionalities are security.
And just one interruption there. Do note that even though it's support by end of 2027, there is an option to extend that by another 2 years. That will be supported by Broadcom. So it's not an end of life. It's just a point at which we would then let additional support.
Exactly. Thanks for the clarification. Now let's talk about Broadcom's latest announcements. And for sure, the major new announcement currently and for several more weeks in terms of explaining, training, all of what surrounds it is the VCF version 9. I think one way to simplify, because we could spend an entire session on that. We've already been into several hours of training already, and there's more to come. So it's a quite extensive topic. I think the way that's best explaining that is from Broadcom, we're moving from VCF8, which is a bundle, to VCF9, which is a product, an extremely complex product. But we're moving from the bundle with limited operational efficiency in terms of integration of the various products to something that has, where is the main focus, is to have a unified private cloud operation. And there's a multitude of features that will allow those that are running the VCF9 to create some value, to lower cost, to facilitate DevOps, all of that. And for consumers of Performance Cloud, you're still going to interact through the vCloud Director. However, in the back end, and that's the good news, is we are having additional tools for better operations, higher SLAs, lower cost. So indirectly, our customers are benefiting from VCF9 as well. And this is really embodying the vision that Broadcom wants to bring to the market. For the purpose of this presentation, there's also a SecOps dashboard. I'll show you a screenshot of that. I asked a question, Broadcom, if that's going to be brought to the tenant level, and it's not included in 9.0, so we'll see what happens. But as far as we are concerned, having access to this SecOps dashboard also means additional capabilities for Sherweb to secure the environment. So taking the slide from my previous presentation in April, because I believe it's still very, very true, the burgernomics, right? So we all understand these kind of purchases that we do in our favorite burger joint, where you buy a trio and save money. And that's really, really the core of Broadcom's vision, is incent strongly the customers to buy the trio. And we went from buying the trio for economic reasons, now we're talking about buying the trio because of integration reasons. To illustrate that, a question that was asked during those presentations by Broadcom was, is there going to be a vSphere 9, a standalone vSphere? And the answer was no. There's nothing announced at this point. We'll see what happens in the future. But currently, the only version 9 product there is the VCF, which includes vSphere, NSX, vSAN, but there will not be a standalone per se. So if you're on vSphere Standard or Enterprise Plus, at this point, there's no announcement for version 9 of it. So moving forward means that you need to step to a VCF 9. So that's this vision that's taking shape progressively. Now, I promised the SecOps dashboard to have a look at it. So this is a screenshot directly from the VMware website. As you can see, it's quite neat. It's also a thorough view of the entire experience. So you see here, for instance, the vSAN host mode, and so that's something that we will start looking at and experimenting with in the near future. Again, for Performance Cloud clients, it means that your provider, Sherweb, has additional capabilities of monitoring your environment and ensuring security. Related to also end of support, so vSphere 7 general support ends this October. We believe there's still a lot of vSphere 7 out there in the field. And we strongly encourage you, if you are amongst our customers, and we're talking essentially here like the ones that are purchasing licenses from us, because Performance Cloud is no longer on vSphere 7, it's on vSphere 8 currently, or version 8, and are going to move to version 9 eventually after a period of testing. But for those who are consuming at vSphere 7, we strongly encourage you to plan your migration. And if you need support, professional services support, Sherweb can help you. Generally, we can say our experience from moving from 7 to 8 So it was VCF 7 to VCF 8 was rather good. So it's a good upgrade. It's not one that's going to be creating a lot of pain, but then again, there's a degree of understanding and experience that you might benefit from. So feel free to reach out to our people on this occasion if you believe you might need some help there. Encouraging you again to be moved away from vSphere 7 in the October timeframe or before. Briefly on reseller, because it's impacting all of our ecosystem. Well, the main news that I'm sure you've heard about is the lowest tier of resellers. And again, I insist this is resellers, not cloud service providers. The lowest tier, which was called registered, is no longer. So Broadcom has removed that entry-level registered tier. The program is slimmed to 3 tiers, Select, Premier, and Pinnacle. And those remaining partners are facing stricter requirements as far as, for instance, sales resource, training, skilling, and whatnot. Important to mention also that this is obviously not unique to Broadcom. We are seeing the same shift in changing channels, increasing the yardstick for resellers across many different vendors, right? The way it's being done with Broadcom is maybe a little different, but this is the trend of the industry in general to constantly increase the yardstick. Direct business, for instance, you need to have much higher volume with some vendors and so on. So this is going in the line of the industry. If one is a Select, Premier, or Pinnacle tier, you would benefit from the partners that will look for a new dancing partner. So clients looking for purchasing their licenses will look at one of those remaining partners that need to continue investing, though, in training, for instance, to keep their status in the future. Now I'd like to invite Alex to present the announcements that are relevant for the cloud service providers.
All right, thanks, Guy. We've seen a steady stream of VMware changes and releases coming from Broadcom. I'm sure there's far more to come, especially looking at VCF 9. In this section, I'm going to highlight a few of the key Broadcom changes that shape how we deliver the VMware services to our customers or partners. We'll look at these new requirements for usage meter 9, VCF license portability, limits on key downloads, and an update on vDefend. These updates are all going to help you stay compliant, offer more choice to your own customers, and then it helps, as part of it, it maintains our own secure and predictable environment for Performance Cloud. Next slide. So Broadcom has consolidated all the VMware product downloads like VCF, vCenter, ESXi, vSAN, etc., into a single portal that now requires token-based authentication for access. So this replaces the older open access URLs and introduces tighter entitlement control. How this might affect your workflows is for centralized access, all VMware downloads now come from one site, no more legacy links. Around token enforcement, each download requires a unique authenticated token that verifies access rights. And so the action required here could be if you have any legacy links, they would have expired by April 24th. So check your automation scripts, your in-product update URLs, and any of your firewall rules to make sure you stay in compliance. Next slide. And we highlighted earlier, and this talked a little bit about some of the defense security capabilities that are coming for VCF. vDefend is one of those examples. vDefend provides built-in NSX security features for modern workloads in VCF environments. It automatically isolates traffic, enforces security policies, and gives clear visibility into threats, all fully integrated, as mentioned, into a single stack, as opposed to kind of being bundled or attached, like we talked about in version 8. Some of the key takeaways here are that we provide immediately stronger security. There's native microsegmentation, which automatically separates network traffic, both inside and between the tenants. So that reduces the spread of threats if something gets in. And I think we all know something's typically getting in for everyone nowadays. Simplified operations, fully built into VCF, so setup is faster and security policies stay consistent across all of your environments. as well as better threat awareness overall. Real-time alerts, threat details, and clear insights help you spot and respond to the issues quickly before they spread, as we mentioned. And obviously operational efficiency. If you have automated protection and you have clear visibility or line of sight to things, it really helps cut down on manual work and makes ongoing management far easier. Next slide.
And just before to add to that, Alex, so why are we talking about vDefend and what's new? And I know that's part of your next slide, but also what was recently announced is the capability to by Broadcom to actually monitor and meter the use of vDefend. So before that, vDefend was announced about a year ago in 2024. There was no reporting on consumption, and therefore there was no interest to monetize for the partners. Now partners can monetize because it's metered, and therefore we have visibility and can bill for it. So that's the interest, and that's what's new, really, is the capability to monetize that feature.
Yeah, and that exactly ties into the Usage Meter 9 because it tracks and reports all of that VMware usage for compliance and billing purposes, the monetization. So the takeaways from this are that, first of all, absolutely most critically, you must upgrade to version 9 by August 5th. If you have a usage meter and you're maintaining and managing it, it's got to go to version 9 by August the 5th, or else it's the only approved way to measure resource usage under the VMware program, and they're basically saying they're going to cut people off if they're not upgraded. Second, this ensures your usage is always captured correctly with no compliance gaps or missed services. Third, the version 9 uses OAuth authentication for secure standardized sign-ins. And then lastly, it automatically detects and reports the usage of the NSX security services like vDefend as mentioned. So everything's included in usage reporting. Next slide.
And quick question, Alex. So some of our customers have made the move to version 9. Can you comment generally on their experience? How easy was it? How difficult was it?
So I can say that actually, as of this morning, we've got almost 50% have now moved over, Guy. And the good news is that every one of them, I sent out a reminder email about kind of the steps. All of them so far have just followed them and had, I don't want to say flawless because I never suggest such things, but have had a very easy process and it's always been under 30 minutes. So,
and I want to add, Alex, if for people if you don't want to receive Alex's constant emails about upgrade, you know what to do. Just upgrade, and feel free to go and have nice vacation this summer and know that the upgrade is done. You don't have anything to worry about as you come back. As you know, Broadcom can be pretty difficult when it gets to non-compliance. So let's, for everybody on this call, make our lives easy. So thanks for the comment on that, Alex. Next slide.
Sure. Another one of the elements that I think is a bit of a benefit here is that they've got some new VCF license portability and entitlements. So it allows customers to reuse eligible VCF licenses, anything past 5.1, across any certified public and private cloud environments. Why is this important to this group? Well, it lets you protect your existing investments in licensing, so it avoids double paying for licenses when migrating workloads. It gives you some flexibility here to enable hybrid and multi-cloud strategies using the same VCF entitlements, so across that public and private model. For operational agility, you can shift your workloads as needed. Again, that entitlement spreading across both, and it gives you access to VCSP services, so it supports easier adoption of managed services from certified providers, Sherweb being one of those. So this change gives the customers more control over how and where they deploy VCF fundamentally, and it aligns licensing with far more modern cloud strategies, which I think is a great thing moving forward. Next slide.
Yeah, and it counters also the argument that we've heard from many customers before this was announced that, hey, we paid in advance for licensing. We're not contemplating migration because of that. Well, this is creating new opportunities, especially for cloud service providers like ourselves, like our partners, to seek out and chase that business. That removes a significant obstacle.
And then one other element, again, tied a little bit to that sort of idea, is that starting May 12th, Broadcom's capping VCSP license key downloads at 200% of the committed core quantity. So this limits how far customers can pre-license infrastructure in advance. what this is and why you have to keep it in mind is this limit affects how far ahead you can pre-license your infrastructure for customer growth. We've heard several stories and heard of, not ourselves, but other people have sort of added very high levels, 500% or more, because they didn't know how much they were going to need to consume or not in some of these licensing in some of their clusters. Well, your deployments must actually match your commits now to avoid any potential activation delays. So what could happen is you could have ascribed that really high number at another location, and now when you go to get a new license or redeploy in another location that you're expecting, you're now past that threshold of that 200%. So with that 200% limit, accurate forecasting is more important now than ever, and we need to ensure that there's enough license capacity ready when needed. Knowing this obviously helps you plan your rollouts and your customer onboarding far better. As we've said, we've undergone this. We're good, and we've definitely heard some experiences externally that this has affected other people. So now Guy can provide some updates on Performance Cloud. Thanks, Guy.
Yeah, and just want to add to that, you might also have seen the announcement that the cap would be reduced to a more difficult 125%. And Broadcom has assured us that they rescinded, so this is no longer the case, although it circulated on the on Broadcom announcements a while ago. You can dismiss that at this point. 200% is the metric. Anyone that's, for instance, migrating to version 8 with the relicensing, that's the work that we are now doing with them, is to ensuring that we're not just adding licenses on top of products that are no longer required, but we're also dismissing licenses that are no longer required. All right, so thanks, Alex. Now we're going to deep dive a little more about how to secure your tenant. We're going to talk essentially about authentication. We could have talked about so many topics, spend the entire session on VPN, on firewall. We decided to focus on this one. I believe there's value, be reminded of everything authentication-wise, and that's what Roddy will be presenting. So thanks, Roddy, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to talking about identity. Yeah, so one of the first things when we start building like a security plan or security program, so we want to talk a little bit about identity. So like our perimeter, when we talk about our traditional boundaries, right, has changed. We found out during COVID, right, like remote employees were capable of doing work remotely. So we were said, okay, let's roll them out. And we said, how do we make work easier? So we start rolling out cloud services. And then how do we make access ubiquitous? So we started adding personal devices to our mix, right? So what does that do? It changes our thinking before having all these different services and saying, besides putting everything behind a traditional firewall, right, and saying that we can protect every single endpoint behind that firewall, that no longer exists, right? So instead of thinking of security from a perimeter-based perspective, like an internal perimeter-based perspective, we start thinking about it from an identity-first perspective. So next slide, please. Mm-hmm. So when we look at what the security world has taught us around incidents, right? So Verizon every year puts out their VBIR, their data breach incident report. So the one this year basically tells us what we've known for many years, right? That identity-based attacks continue to be the first and foremost thing that attackers use to get access to a network, right? So credential abuse being 22% of all known attacks. Those are things like known password breaches, attackers using passwords that have been part of previous breaches, using things like simple or guessable passwords, or even things like passwords or API keys being exposed in public repositories like GitHub or potentially leaked through other sources. And then 16% being traditionally what we think of as identity-based attacks like phishing, right? Someone sends you a malicious email with a link to it, maybe has a spoofed Office 365 login or a line of business app login. You put in your credentials and potentially like an MFA token or something to that effect, and they get access to your services and your devices and your data. So that number has been constantly in about the same area, like with credential abuse and phishing being some of the most used attacks we see, right? So when we start talking about identity as being like the first thing we should help protect in our security programs, we have to think about the different ways attackers can get access to your services. So next slide, please. All right, so what should we be doing as part of that identity security program, right? So single sign-on being the most proficient one, that's any kind of control framework you're going to look at around security controls, CIS, NIST, ISO, even privacy rules out there like GDPR, right? Address the concerns of having different identities across multiple services or devices, right? So single sign-on helps consolidate a lot of that into one single authentication provider. So a lot of people think that if you put all your eggs in one basket around identity, if that account gets breached or is a part of an incident, that then all your services are vulnerable. Well, that's true. We have to look at the holistic approach, right? The full approach to it. As you start to grow your services, as you use more cloud services out there, as you start to expand tool sets, et cetera, like managing all those different accounts and having a centralized like source of truth around logging becomes a lot more difficult. So single sign-on, while you may look at it and say, all right, there's a couple of downsides to it, the positives from using single sign-on outweigh the negatives in the long run, and it's recommended by pretty much every security professional I come across that I've worked with in the past. We go down the list, right? We go to MFA, right? So making sure that we use some kind of secondary authentication method, rotating code, FIDO tokens, challenge authentication, right? Things like that. Conditional access, so making sure that we put additional rules around authentication in place. Can we lock down the ability to log into a service from a singular IP address, right? Or can we lock it down to only enrolled or trusted devices? So making sure you put some limits around how people can log in, because by default, if you just allow anybody to be able to access a cloud service or line of business application that maybe is hosted, anybody from any IP address can log in. So if they're stolen credentials and maybe have stolen a MFA token, they can get access. So you can put some additional controls around how or where someone can authenticate from. Implementing role-based access controls, so making sure that you put in different roles and their permissions so you don't have too much permission sprawl across the board. So one of the problems I've run across, and this is from my years in the past of doing auditing work, is people move positions internally at a company and usually tend to get more permissions based on their roles, but we never go back and remove those permissions. So making sure that roles align with duties and that they only have access to those specific roles and duties are important. Least privilege access, again, goes back to the same thing with role-based access controls, making sure that people do not have more permission than they need to get their job done, even to the point of implementing things like privilege access management, where you can only give people administrative access when they need it. So doing things like just-in-time administrative access, or making sure that that there's some kind of centralized access management that's logged, right? So when someone needs to become an administrator, that you have a system in place to log that access, and that you're only giving them administrative access when and how they need it. Next slide. All right, so same thing for vCloud Director, right? So VMware vCloud Director does support SAML and OIDC, OpenID Connect. So those are external mechanisms or methods for implementing third-party identification or external ID protectors. So things like Intra, Okta, if you're using Google Cloud Platform, if all your identities inside there, tying that into centralized service. So this ties back into doing SSO, right? And then again, like each tenant can integrate their own identity provider. So you self-manage your own SSO. So bring your own SSO here, right? Preferably, right? Like I'm a big fan of making sure you use Intra. Most people use, I would say use Office 365 and have some kind of Intra ID. So pulling in Intra through the SAML process and making sure it's integrated in. So you have all that integration and role-based access controls and logging inside your Office 365 environment. Next slide.
And thanks, Roddy. Just a quick comment on
Yeah,
that.
sure.
Definitely inviting any partner that is on the call today or maybe listening on this in YouTube. If you have a local user set up with ID and password on your vCloud Director, to contact us if you need assistance setting up a SAML or OIDC-based federation, which is considerably more secure and opens the way for MFA, which is what you're about to cover, I believe, Roddy.
Yeah. So like, let's say you integrated in with Intra, then you could then use conditional access policies and continuous evaluation policies, and we could talk about a little bit risk-based conditional access policies as well, where if someone signs in from a potential risky location or like a non-traditional location, you can step up their MFA, right? So multi-factor authentication, just to give a crash course, because I feel sometimes we need to review the basics. So as you can tell, a lot of times we got away from the term 2FA because we want to make sure people do use different forms of authentication besides just traditionally like passwords and like the text message or one-time code, etc. So there's 3 different things, right? You have to pick at least 2. So multi-factor authentication covers around knowledge, so things you know, like a security question or a PIN or your password, something that you have in your possession. So if you have like the one-time password or one-time number from like a text message or rotating codes, security keys, etc. And then something that you have or that you are, right? So fingerprint, face recognition, biometric scanning, etc. The whole idea being that if someone has one piece of the key, they can't have access to the other one. So that goes on to our next slide, I believe.
Yeah, and to add to that, Roddy, I just want to share that MFA is not native to vCloud Director. That's important to understand. If you want to turn on MFA capability, that has to be through a third-party solution and not through natively through vCloud Director.
Thank you. Yep. So what's some best practices? So a lot of times when we start to go down the MFA journey, we don't really think of what's the process around this, and we just throw it all out there, and it becomes a bit of a mess. And so what I usually tell people is first things first. If you have any privileged accounts, so people who have administrative access or management access, those accounts that can create users or spin up services or maybe even create new VMs, etc., inside the platform, make sure you protect those accounts first. So put some kind of strong multi-factor authentication in process first. The second thing is for any remote access service. So think VPNs, a cloud login. So if you have like a web interface that you can log into, make sure that any user who has access to those services, even if it's a read-only user or even if it's a non-privileged account, make sure you put protection around those with MFA. Include break glass accounts. So make sure that if you do have an account that it falls, that either it's separate from the rest of your accounts with regards to MFA. So maybe you put an account like a really strong, complex, 64 character randomly generated password that's only used in emergency situations, like our MFA service is down or some other technical difficulty prevents us from having access, because one of the tenets of cybersecurity, besides just protecting things, is also the term availability. So making sure that when we do have access, if something bad does happen, we have access to our services, but also putting monitoring around those accounts. So if you have legacy accounts or break glass accounts, right, that do not have MFA enabled, that you put alerting in place, preferably to like a ticketing system or to multiple people, so that if that break glass account is used, that someone looks into it and sees why it's being used. Right? Same thing for legacy accounts. Looking at authentication logs and looking at everything else around there to make sure that they're not being misused or abused. And the last thing is education. So making sure that people understand why we're using MFA, the process around MFA, what happens or what's the rollout going to look like, and then including that as part of your regular training, including your phishing training, because attackers do attempt to steal MFA tokens, and they're very successful at stealing MFA tokens. So things like rotating codes and other things, and with the addition of like cookies and if you ever go to log into like an Office 365 account, it's like remember this device or remember this computer, etc. Like literally caches part of that security token in a web browser, and those can be utilized as well. So just making sure that you continue that education process around MFA and like doing it on a regular basis, because as you know, you can tell somebody once about a certain security procedure or a certain security vulnerability, but you have to reinforce it I think the rule is like once a quarter or at least twice a year, making sure you re-reference that training. Next slide, please. All right, and then going down the list, right? Least secure to most secure, right? We try to put this in place because a lot of times people just go with the easiest solution with MFA, which is usually text message or a call. But as we know, there are ways to manipulate that with IMEI spoofing and just poor practices with cell phone companies. So making sure that we try to get away from using SMS or call-based MFA if possible. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes that's the only thing that's offered. That's okay. But we need to start pushing up the ladder. So making sure that things like challenge off is being used. So if someone goes to log in, especially like we have this on some of our services here, where like I get a code or like I get it prompted to put in a number that the authentication screen is showing, so we can have some kind of challenge off. But also moving up, especially for those highly privileged accounts, to using things like FIDO tokens and other token-based access like Windows Hello. And just making sure that you protect those tokens as much as possible. So FIDO tokens and Windows Hello are pretty resistant to token theft. So those software tokens that get placed in web browsers when you authenticate. So making sure we continue to push that forward and upwards. There are some challenges there, right? Like I've heard some of my friends who've used Windows Hello, they lose access to their token, and it's very serious. Sometimes you can't get access to accounts, so making sure that we protect those tokens. So if you're using FIDO tokens like the hardware tokens, we store them in a secure place, a safe, a locked drawer, etc., and that we only pull them out when necessary, especially for those break glass accounts or other highly privileged accounts we may only use every once in a while. Just making sure we put some controls around that. And I think that covers it for my slides.
Thank you, Roddy.
Yeah,
And
thank you so
one thing
much.
I believe, to remind everyone is how CSPs used not to be targeted by malicious actors. And now it's changing, right? So I think we're seeing the MSP market be more targeted because of the value for potential bad guys out there that want to exploit that capability.
Yeah. So like if I have let's just say like a master account that oversees all my clients portals, right? So like I'll go back to Office 365. I have a partner account, and that partner account has access to every single one of my clients' tenants. It's a pretty juicy account to get access to. So I'm going to target that the best way I can. So making sure, again, going back to those highly privileged accounts, like we have to make sure we have some pretty strong precautions in place, especially around conditional access and only being allowed access through like trusted devices, maybe enrolled in Intune, etc.
And for those who would like to hear more about Rody, you have quite a bit of contributions on our YouTube channel, right? So all these topics are covered more in depth, but thanks for spending time looking specifically at Performance Cloud, which is obviously something that we want to keep as secure as possible for the benefit of our clients, securing their tenants and how they access it.
Yep, thank you.
I want to go the extra mile, basically, speaking quickly about a service that we're also providing. The PC Performance Cloud is a service that's going all the way up to hypervisor, and it's secured, and our clients are accessing it through the Cloud Director. What happens for the guest OS? What happens for the application layer? Well, this is where the NOC service from Sherweb can help you in many different ways. So the NOC for Performance Cloud is optimized to monitor your environment, to issue some alerts, but also to provide patching with pre-patch and post-patch report. And well, surprise, but patching sometimes just isn't enough. So we have even more. One feature is to have a monthly vulnerability scan report that's performed by Qualys, and that will tell you missed patches, but also things that need to be addressed, such as it could be as simple as an H key that needs to be changed to address a security vulnerability. The application layer, if the application is supported by Qualys, and a lot of them are, will flag anything that needs to be addressed in the application layer. So it's a great added value. And also we're providing advanced cybersecurity protection. And how do we do that? Well, it's through vDefender. Right, so vDefender is deployed in the VMs in Performance Cloud. It provides for advanced protection and detection of threats. And we are sending a weekly report on your status. And it does not impact performance significantly. There's very minimal overhead that's needed from the agents. So with that said, I believe we're doing pretty good on time, and we have one final easy poll question. Would you like Sherweb to contact you to discuss further? And feel free to answer yes if you'd like to have a further conversation on any of those topics, and our team will carry on. And that's fine too if you're okay for now. Well, we hope that this was valuable content, and we're opening now for any extra questions at this point. So I believe, Aquila, I don't know if you want to quarterback this final section. If there's any questions, is there anything in the chat right now?
Nothing in the chat or in the Q&A. If you guys do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Otherwise, you can also email us at pcsales@sherweb.com, and one of our experts will be happy to help you there as well.
And feel free to put in the chat any topic that you would like us to prepare a further presentations. We'll try to keep a certain rhythm with regard to having those webinars. I believe they're valuable. The content itself also have a second life on YouTube, and we see that the views show that there is interest. And this market is moving very, very fast. So Broadcom is making announcements. We're going to have more deep dive on VCF9, for instance, that was just announced. So feel free, if you would like to have a deeper conversation or a topic to be covered in the future webinars or one-on-one conversation with you, feel free to also add that to the chat.
Right, bunch. Nothing in the chat or Q&A yet.
Okay. So if you want to learn more, the email below is dedicated to Performance Cloud, so pcsales@sherweb.com. Feel free also to write. And with that said, Aquila, I think that's it for today. Let's thank our participants and whoever contributed to this webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you Guy, Alex, Roddy, Matt for your help as well. So thank you all. Don't forget you will receive a link to the recording and the slides after this webinar. So please keep an eye out for that.